Happy New Year, H-Town and Astros fans everywhere. Welcome to episode 40 of the Believe in Astros podcast on the Believe Podcasting Network. I hear 40 is the new 20, Blummer.
Oh man, this is a big year for me. I may have to say 50 is the new 20.
Dude, I know. Believe me, I've already been thinking about birthday episode options. Believe me,
Oh no!
I've already been. It's in the works. It's all happening.
Get out the walker with the tennis balls and let's make it happen.
I've been thinking about contacting everyone you know and getting them to give you a birthday message. So,
oh man,
it's all working.
Half century's coming out. Good,
yeah, that's right.
That would be actually interesting to hear. I mean, there'd be a lot of old farts and
a lot of.
My last year in Arizona, I played at the age of 39 and like 3/4, and my nickname was Viejo. So, yeah.
Nice.
That was ahead of my time.
You're younger than me, so count your blessings. I'm Geoff Blum, my partner, Geoff Blum. Apparently, all his fingers and arms are still intact, so he didn't blow himself up on New Year's Eve.
I tried,
which is a
but
good
it didn't
thing.
work.
Yeah, I saw a couple of Instagram posts. I noticed it looked like you were getting lighting it up, literally.
I believe it.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and of course YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe to keep up with us. By the way, my apologies for us not being on YouTube last week. That was on me. It was because, I know, shocking. It was because I had bronchitis, and I literally had to mute like 100 times of me clearing my throat and coughing. And so I felt like that might not be the best look on YouTube.
You quitter.
I know. I know. I was hurt, not injured, right? You know, it's the old thing.
Exactly.
So, but be sure to like and subscribe to keep up with us. You can give us a follow at Believe in Astros on Twitter. You can find Blummer and myself pretty much everywhere. I'm at Geoff Balke. Blummer's at Blummer27. Send us your comments and questions. Love seeing all of those. We read them all. Anybody got any New Year's resolutions? Yeah, me either.
Yeah.
You got any? I don't know. I don't need New Year's resolutions. I don't need anything else depressing me about the things I'm not doing.
I mean, you're setting yourself up for failure. I mean, we already talk about a game that's based on failure. Why do we need to compound the fact?
Right. Look, if the best hitter in the league doesn't even hit a third of the time that's up there, should I even be bothered to match a third of my New Year's resolutions? I think not. So, how's your New Year going so far, Blummer? All is well, I assume, in Blummerland?
Yeah, it's going well. It's getting better, and I can, I'm actually looking forward to this season. My mentality has stayed the same since I was a player. Usually after that first of the years, when you start picking up the baseball, you pick up the bat, you start throwing, you do baseball activities, and that's kind of where I'm at mentally right now. Is I'm throwing the ball, we're playing some catch, and I'm looking forward to in a couple months. I mean, less than a couple months, you're going to see pitchers and catchers reporting. So yeah, I'm excited, man.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming faster than anyone can imagine, thanks to this really short off season.
Gosh, yeah.
Which is a blessing and a curse. Not necessarily a kind of a curse for the players. Although I don't know if you saw the video of Jose Altuve getting down in Venezuela. Did you catch that? Dude. He's in this video shaking his ass. His wife is live streaming it, which is amazing. I'm like, dude's got moves.
Okay, so you're telling me that Jose Altuve is one of the shortest players in the league. He's got an MVP. He's got 2 World Series rings, Silver Sluggers, batting title, All-Star appearances, all around like just good dude when I talk to him. And now the dude can dance too? I mean, this guy is awesome, and that video, I was even more impressed with how he was moving.
Cool.
That was incredible.
It was so cool. I loved watching stuff. I love seeing stuff like that. There's just something really cool about that. Yeah. Quick word for our sponsors. BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting this season. Everything from NFL and bowl season to esports. Speaking of the NFL, root for the Texans to lose, because if they lose, number one pick in the draft. Welcome to Houston. What's his name? Bryce Young. Bryce Young. I always want to call him Bryce Harper. That's what happens when you.
Hey, if he plays like Bryce Harper in a football uniform, I'm in.
Exactly. Him or C.J. Stroud, I'll take it. You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at BetOnline. BetOnline features live betting, free contests, and live scores for almost any sport or game imaginable. We're the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports leagues and events. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use promo code BELIEVE, B-L-E-A-V, to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, Blum, quick thing here. my buddies over at Clutch Fans, the wonderful Rocket site, Dave Hardest my former business partner, who I love, they would have a saying, a sarcastic saying. They would say when the Rockets would make a very minor trade move, and they would say splash, like, and so I'm gonna say about the trade for Bligh Madris, splash. The Astros make a move, cash only, I guess, to Detroit. Madris has only had a cup of coffee in the majors, which, by the way, is like one of my favorite baseball sayings. Generally played in the outfield, right field most of the time, although they've experimented with him a little bit around the infield. Pretty decent defensive player, but hasn't done much offensively, been pretty inconsistent at the plate. What are your thoughts on this move? It brings the roster number down to 39. I'm guessing he's probably going to be. Will he be a non-roster invitee? I guess he's on the roster. They put him on it, so they assume he's going to. If nothing else, he'll be there in spring training. So, what do you think about this move overall? What's the any thoughts? Do you know anything about Bligh Madris? I keep saying his name because I'm proud that I can pronounce it.
Well, and I've already learned more by you pronouncing it, so now I know how to pronounce his name. But to your point about the
but I should say, shout out to the Locked On Astros guys, because they actually had the name pronunciation right, and so
trust me, all of us Astro Twitter people and followers, we need to lean on each other sometimes,
exactly.
even with pronunciations.
100%.
But everybody on the 40-man roster will be invited to big league camp. The non-roster invitees are usually the ones that are not on that 40-man roster, just to clarify that real quick.
Right.
So Madris being on there, he should be in big league camp. And like you said, we're all learning about him. And I think, the first thing is when you hear about these moves or you talk about that splash, that's a little bit of a ripple in the organization, you got to remember the Astros this is a dynasty. This is an organization that has finished number one, if not number one, number two, in 2020, one time out of 6 times going to the playoffs. So their draft position is very low as far as the draft order is concerned. And I think that's why you're going to see it. Maybe you start to see a couple of these little bit of moves and you're like, why would you go get a guy like this? Maybe it's because they can't go out there and draft that top 10 pick and say this guy's going to project and be in the big leagues 2 to 3 years. Maybe it's an opportunity where the scouting department for the Astros has done a very good job in the past of going out, finding particular guys that they think are going to fit their mentality, fit their development, fit their organization, and they go pluck them from another roster and say, okay, this guy might be an afterthought in Detroit, amazingly enough. Let's go pay a couple of bucks for him, bring him down here, see if we can work him into our organization and make him worthwhile and give him an opportunity. And Bligh Madris fits maybe some of the mold. I haven't checked all the walk to strikeout ratios. Maybe they have an idea that they can develop an eye out of this guy and create an on-base percentage that makes him a little more valuable because the power numbers aren't really there as far as a corner outfielder is concerned. Or maybe it's just a defensive guy because you have a big league roster right now that is dominated by high offensive players. Yeah. And if you can have a defensive replacement, or if you can have a guy that can spell a guy during an injury, maybe that's where he fits in. And he does have some big league experience. Granted, it's in Detroit, Pittsburgh, but now you're in a big league organization. No offense to those others, but the Astros are elite compared to Pittsburgh and Detroit right now. And maybe getting him into that mix makes him a better ball player. Being around greatness, and I don't know if you've done this, but I've played golf and I suck. But if I play around guys that are good, I usually have a little bit better round. So hopefully that rubs off on Bligh.
That happens. That happens when I play basketball for sure. Suddenly I find myself hitting shots I didn't think I could hit. There's something about that raising the level of game. And no offense to the AAA plus teams of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, we like to call those quadruple A.
Nice, perfect. But I do wonder. So they brought this guy in, and obviously they have Hensley, and they have Mauricio Dubon. So they've got a few of these utility-type players. We've talked about Yuli. I don't going to keep talking about Yuli. It's not cool because, frankly, Yuli's awesome. But at 39 men on the roster, you got to think this is foreboding, to consider what it's like when you've got Yuli being the 40th, assuming he gets signed. It's not good. I don't even like talking about it, to be honest with you, but I think it's something we have to broach the subject.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does start to limit it, and you start to think about roster construction after the first of the year. We talked about getting ready for spring training being only a month and a half away, and I think financially maybe the idea is David Hensley, maybe the idea is Mauricio Dubon, because Hensley is homegrown, drafted, developed, put in the big leagues, put together, was eventually a DH in a World Series game, so they think highly enough of him. And he has the ability, and I think a big key for utility guys this day and age, yes, it's great to be athletic, but if you can prove that you can play a comparable or a competent shortstop, you're going to have an ability to be a utility guy. Hensley has that. Even at 6'6", the dude is massive. And then you have Mauricio Dubon, who comes over in a trade. I think that carries a little bit of weight because they're trading away current talent to get you in this organization, Mauricio Dubon, and he has value because he can play a competent shortstop at times, and he can play a competent center field.
Yeah, he can play center field, which is a biggie. Really.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, I think that's a big deal, and I think you're right.
And the price tag. I mean, $1.5 million for two guys?
You can't, honestly, you can't discount that because, look, financial flexibility is really important to even teams that are in top 10 in payroll, like the Astros. There's only, one Mets, one Yankees, one Dodgers, that are just going to spend and spend and spend like, money grows on trees. For them, it probably does. Mm-hmm. The Astros are not one of those teams. It's not like they're broke, but they can't just go out there and spend willy-nilly. They've got to be smart about how they do it. And frankly, as they should. Whenever I see people complaining about, Jim Crane's not going to spend the money, I'm like, you don't really want him spending all that money. You don't want him doing that. That's not a smart move by an organization. Steve Cohen can throw his billions around if he wants to. But in the long run, that's not smart. That's not a great way to field a roster. And it just doesn't make any sense, And frankly, there's only one of that guy anyway.
Yeah, and it's frightening how much money he's able to throw around. It's still, undetermined what he's going to do with Carlos Correa. But at the same time, I think an educated spender is going to be a little bit better. And considering what the Astros have done and considering what Jim Crane's done, no matter if it's Jeff Luhnow, James Click, or whoever the next guy is going to be, they're going to be very educated on how they spend their money. And I love the fact, and you can't, Jim is one of those owners that, has the flow as far as cash, but at the same time, he's just not going to, explosively throw money around. Everybody's going to say, well, he did that for Justin Verlander. Well, look at what Justin Verlander did.
Results.
The dude got 2 Cy Youngs, man. So I would say that money's well spent, but he got to a point where he said, I think I have a limit on this guy, and he found it.
And he didn't sign him for like 10 years. He signed him for a reasonable amount of time. Look, I don't think the Astros are afraid to give guys loads of money per year. I think they're afraid to give them loads of money per year over long stretches of time. And that is a perfectly reasonable, understandable, and practical approach to baseball, to Major League Baseball. There's no reason to go out and just go crazy and spend and give guys tons of years. You can do it, as we've seen some teams do, but those teams are going to pay for it at some point, literally and metaphorically.
Well, I just love the fact, and I know we talk about analytics a lot, and I've kind of gotten absorbed into these WAR numbers, but on paper, it's a way to evaluate a team and evaluate how that money's being spent. So if you look at the Dodgers, if you look at the Mets, the Yankees, and you look at WAR numbers and the cost, the cost efficiency ratio, or whatever you want to call this thing, the Astros have done a really good job. They've got a high WAR and a reasonable payroll.
Right.
It makes sense.
That's exactly what you want. That's exactly what you want. Mm-hmm. Speaking of that, arbitration is looming. I think the day that the Astros have to put out their arbitration numbers is coming up in like 10 days or something. Mm-hmm. And then arbitration starts beginning of February. There are a couple of pretty big names on their arbitration list. I mean, starting with Kyle Tucker, Framber Valdez, Christian Javier. I mean, we're talking about some very, very serious names on the arbitration list. Now, in the Astros' favor, they can do arbitration and not worry too much about extending all these guys. They don't have to.
Yeah.
They're going to want to at some point. But the question is, are they going to try and extend any? I mean, I'm sure they're probably going to try.
Yeah.
But are they going to be able to extend any of these guys right now? Or is it all going to be sort of like, all right, well, here's your 1 year. I mean, I think Christian Javier still has like 3 years left of arbitration. I think Framber's got 2. After this, Tucker will have 2. So they still have him under team control, but I'm sure they're going to want to work out some kind of a deal. Whether they can or not, who knows? Yeah.
No, and I think the signing of Yordan Alvarez, what was it? 6-7 years, 119, $120 million.
Yeah,
that was a very good deal for Yordan. That was a very good deal for the Houston Astros. But at the same time, everybody goes, well, just give Tucker the same deal. He's a different player. The man can steal some bases. He's a Gold Glove outfielder. There's a lot of things that Tucker brings to the table. I think he's on the trajectory, much like Yordan, to be an MVP candidate, but not just in the hitting sense, in the defense and the base stealing. And his dynamic is only going to get better with the bigger bases and the pitch clocks and the pickoff rule and stuff like that.
And the shift.
And the shift. Good Lord, he could turn into a 280, 300. 30 and 100 RBI guys. So that would just change everything for him and really, jack the price. So you've got to be careful, but I know that the Astros love him, want him. They want to establish that. So I believe that's a long way of saying I do believe that they're talking. They're trying to figure something out in order to get him to stay in Houston a little bit longer. But, these arbitration windows, you've got Javier, like you said, for 3 more years, Framber and Tucker for 2 more. You start to think about the extensions on Bregman and Altuve. Yeah. All these guys are kind of, climaxing at the same time if you think about it. So there's some foreshadowing, maybe looking forward at the organization that maybe they're looking at on who can be the marquee guys past a Bregman, past an Altuve, and maybe it's Framber, Javier. Those are 2 guys that could be at the top end of a rotation, and that's probably the money they're going to be looking for. But the luxury the Astros have is if they're unable to strike a deal now, they can sign these guys to arbitration deals the next 2-3 years and still have them and then extend them after that. So the opportunity for fans is that you're going to have those guys here. Yeah. They're going to get paid, but they're not going anywhere. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I think sometimes in these sort of circumstances, we make a little, I'd say we as fans make a little too much of, well, they're up for arbitration, we need to get them signed. And I know that the arbitration process is not a fun one for anyone.
Oh, dude, it sucks.
You go in there and they tell you suck, basically. Here's all the reasons why we can't.
Every way to tell you that.
Did you ever go through arbitration, Blummer?
No, I completely avoided it, man. I didn't want to go into that room. You kidding me?
What did people tell you about it?
Yeah, my first year of arbitration was with the Astros, I think in 2002 or 3. And my agent called me. He's like, hey, they're going to tender you. We got to give them a number. They're going to give us a number. I'm like, dude, between you and I, let's find a number. I don't want to go in that room and have them just berate me. Because then you have to go play for the team that berated you. It's the most bizarre situation.
It is so weird. Have you ever heard of any stories from people that were just like, oh, it was the worst ever? I'm sure you must have to tell you.
I've heard it from guys who are, marginal guys like me who are role players who were just eligible. And then you hear it from, I've heard it from guys that were like superstars. They're like their first year arbitration. I'm like, bro, I hope I never have to do that again. And these guys are all stars after their 3rd, 4th year. Yet they have to go sit there across from a table where they can just absolutely just, nitpick everything. They're like, well, for a stretch during the season, you did not get on. It's crazy.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You talk about peripheral numbers and expanding the analytics. They're reaching and they're just grinding on you. And it's just,
It would be so tempting to be like, yeah, well, you need to lose a little bit of weight there, buddy. Just
I was going to say, can you return this favor a little bit?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, really? I didn't walk enough? I didn't walk
your left eyebrow's bigger than your right.
Maybe you need to walk a little more, son. That's all I'm saying. Oh, man. That is ruthless. I can't even imagine. That's like annual reviews for people but just, while you're begging for money at the same time. That's terrible.
Yeah.
That sounds awful. No, I want no part of that. I'm glad you didn't have to be part of that. Let's change gears just a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about injuries. This kind of came up because we obviously saw this devastating injury to Bills safety Damar Hamlin, still in critical condition in a Cincinnati hospital after being hit in the chest and going into cardiac arrest. Obviously, our thoughts are with him and his family. I was stunned when it happened. I think I was watching the Rockets game, and I was looking at Twitter like we all do, and I saw that come across, and I mean, it's awful. And obviously, injuries are part of the game. Sports are physical, even non-contact sports are physical. But how do players deal with these types of things? Like when you see, never mind let's set aside the guy almost dying on the field.
Dude.
When you see somebody horribly injured and you're seeing that happen, it's one of your friends, it's one of your teammates, how do players deal with that? Never mind their own injuries. How do they deal with their teammates' injuries?
Yeah, and the Damar Hamlin situation strikes a chord with every ex-professional athlete. I think just because, like you're talking about, if you play the game long enough, we always talk about it, you're going to see something you've never seen before, and maybe something you never anticipated. And I think that there's never the anticipation of catastrophic injury. There's the anticipation, when you put your body on the line and you're playing at this level, there's the opportunity for injury to happen. But I think when you have something catastrophic, and what I mean by catastrophic is something that's going to take you off the field, put you on the injured list, and need surgery to repair. That's my idea of catastrophic, not what happened to Damar Hamlin or what we see in the NFL with some of these concussions. I can't imagine having a car wreck every weekend as a job. And that's basically what the NFL is. And one thing that really jumps to me when these things happen is that is a human being that is laying there. That is a human being that needs expert emergency help.
Yeah.
And that's what struck me with Damar Hamlin. And I think that's why it was great they canceled that game. I'm not sure if they'll be able to play it. And I'm not even sure how a teammate, even opposing player, is going to try and understand how we're going to go play this game knowing that happened on a field and that could be me. And that's always the thought, man, that could have been me.
Right.
But I've been on the field for I remember we were talking a little bit off air. I remember we were in Los Angeles and Brian Hunter hit a line drive back in 02-03, and it was a left-handed Asian pitcher, can't remember his name, hit him in the head and ricocheted over behind the catcher almost all the way to the backstop. And it was one of those things where everything, as soon as contact is made, everything immediately stops because you were sitting there going, that should not have happened, and it's bad. Pitcher, crumples to the ground. Even if Brian Hunter, is standing there looking there going, do I run? What do I do? I can't, because your first instinct when you see that is run to their aid.
Of course.
And try and, make that person better. But you play the game, you finish it out, and they get carted off the field. You have the conversations in the clubhouse. I vividly remember a game in Milwaukee where I watched, I went to go tag Jeff Jenkins at third base, and I watched him dislocate and break his ankle about 6 inches from my face. And that wrecked me. I heard it, I saw it, I ran away, and they spent 20 minutes trying to get him off the field. So, you're in for it, but you never know how you're going to react until you see it. And it's just, it's hard. It's very hard. But as a professional athlete, to a point, you understand those things are going to happen and you understand the risk. But I think what we saw the other night is something that I'm not sure many of us can actually comprehend.
Right. Two things on that. You mentioned the fact that he needed emergency care. I mean, shout out to those doctors. I mean,
Amen.
You want to talk about just heroes, man. I mean, it's amazing to me when you see something like that. What just blows me away is how they're just doing their job. Like, it's not like for us.
It's a reaction.
It's for us. It's a miracle. Like, it's a freaking miracle. But for them, this is what they were trained to do. They're just like the professional athletes, and without them, he might not have survived. The fact that they sprung into action within seconds of that happening. I mean, it was just like that. That was just incredible to me. I honestly brought tears to my eyes when I thought about it afterwards, how I was more moved by that than I was probably by anything else, by the fact that these healthcare workers who lay their lives and their, livelihoods on the line all the time, throughout COVID and, in every other circumstance.
Absolutely.
There they were out there like saving this guy's life, literally, in a moment when, it's just so impressive to me. It's so, it makes me feel better about my own health and well-being that there are people out there like that exist, and even if it's breaking an ankle, like you talked about, seeing that dislocated ankle, I'll still think about Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters when he completely dislocated his ankle falling off a stage, and they held it in place so he could play the rest of the gig. Right? They had a doctor. Yeah. They had a doctor on stage going like this, hold this, I mean, that's rock and roll right there. But it's just amazing what they do and how they are able to change everything because of science. It's amazing.
No, it's great. It's advancing. And I mean, I know that, playing a violent contact sport like football is, I just read an article that said they had 30 personnel that are trained in CPR and emergency techniques like this. Yeah. And I do have another podcast, and one of the things we do at the end of every single podcast,
shout out Bleacher Blums.
Yeah, Bleacher Blums. If you're not sick of me completely, but at the end of every podcast, we thank healthcare workers, and you always think about, it's going to be an ER doctor or somebody that helped me in surgery here in my everyday life, to make sure my back pain goes away, or a nurse that went to the next level and got me a warm blanket. No, these people are life savers.
Yes.
And in a situation where you don't anticipate life being threatened, they stepped up and did an unbelievable job. And it's just a credit to their profession and their adherence to learning and becoming better and maintaining that greatness that they have the ability to do.
Yeah, and the NFL also requires a level 1 trauma center in every city where they have games, which tells you just how. That's great. Look, we don't want to get
realization.
We don't want to get into the whole, like you said, a car crash every week. That's not really an exaggeration. I remember seeing, I think Tiki Barber was on Fallon or Letterman or something, and they were asking him what was it like to be hit by a linebacker when you're a running back, and he said, "You see that brick wall over there?" He said, "He goes, run as fast as you can, face first into that brick wall. That's what it feels like." And he said, "I'm not really exaggerating." And they talk about how those guys, they take their uniforms off and they're just covered in bruises, And of course, I did a story a couple of years ago about a former Patriot linebacker and his battles with CTE. He doesn't know he has it, but he's had many concussions, and kind of got to know him, and he's a good dude, but just these things are terrible, and you see it increasingly. And I don't want to get on some soapbox here about the NFL and injuries, but the fact that they do have to have all that personnel around, medical personnel and the level 1 trauma centers and an ambulance in the stadium, that just tells you how devastating that sport can be, to the guys who have to perform it. I mean, hats off to the medical professionals. And look, no hate to the football players. They're doing what, using their God-given abilities. And but man, it's violent and it's dangerous. And we saw the results of that the other night. We were talking off air, like you said. The worst I ever saw was the Billy Wagner when he got hit in the head.
I saw a video of it.
I looked it up. It was Arizona. It was Kelly Stinnett. Yeah, who hit it. I remember seeing it live. I was watching it on TV, and it hit off his head. And I remember just seeing his feet come up off the ground. Like, it hit him so hard, it just took him. And I remember just thinking, and they kept, that was the other thing, though. They kept playing the game. Right? The NFL just suspended the game. I think they've just canceled it altogether, which is probably the right thing. I mean, they don't have enough time anyway with the playoffs looming. But that was the right thing to do, right? I mean, how could you keep playing?
Oh man, no, that was 100% the right thing to do. Just watching the reaction of other players, physically having played on a professional field, how do you focus?
Right.
How do you know? And what the sad reality of this is we're getting to know Damar Hamlin better now than we did before the injury, which is probably a shame. And I know Buffalo Bill fans probably knew him greatly, but the more we learn about these guys, and it's a shame we learn. It's like artists. After they pass away, their art is worth more. Why don't we appreciate them now? Why don't we learn more about them now? And the more I learn about Damar Hamlin, the more I'm like, damn, this guy is a phenomenal human being.
Yeah.
And the video of him hugging his mom before the game, I mean, everything about this is heartbreaking, but it just leads up to like what you're saying. There was no other option. There's no way you could have gone out there and played.
I agree.
I would imagine if both teams were asked to go out there and take the field, they might have, just said, no, we're not going. There would have been, 106 guys would have said, you know what, we're not going to play. We don't care what you say. We're not playing.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't blame them one bit.
No, I wouldn't blame them either. You're completely right. And, it's funny you say that. You talk about being, the sort of community of athletes and how we don't really, unfortunately, as fans, our focus is almost entirely on what players do on the field, right? Or on the court or on the ice.
Or what they do from a fantasy football team.
Right. Or how much money they get paid, right? I mean, we hear occasional things about their charity. They do toys for drives for kids or whatever it is, right? Blah, blah, blah. But never setting all that aside, right? Let's set all that aside. In the NFL, your average career is 3 years. So it's not like,
think about that.
I mean, that's unbelievable. But so setting all that aside, these are human beings. These are people. They're not I've never understood that. And I do understand some fans getting, they're like, well, they make millions of dollars to go out there. It's like, yeah, but they're still people. It's not like anything's changed. They're still flesh and blood. Maybe they go out there and good for them. They've the talent to go out there and make money and doing something they love. Hey, great. But that doesn't make them immediately right for scrutiny. And you can criticize them. You can criticize their play on the field all you want, and that's fair game, right? Yep. They understand that they're out there for that. But
that's the expected risk when you play, man.
Right? Exactly. I mean, well, you're playing for your job every day. You know that, right? So, but you can't going out there and like talking about players not being you can't talk about them about their humanity. These are still people. And I think we forget that in these circumstances with a guy like Damar Hamlin. I love that his GoFundMe for his toy drive thing, his original goal was $2,500, and they've raised $6 million. It's like this is so good, right? Yeah. Just so good, because ultimately, I want to believe, and I try to believe that people are inherently good, and when you've got something like this that happens, it makes you remember that. And I hope sports fans stop for a minute too. And remember that these guys on the field, they are humans, They have families, they have mothers and children and, spouses and whatever else. And, we saw with Brittany Griner, like there became this political debate. Brittany Griner was a political prisoner, right? She had a family. She was in a cell in Russia, right? Like, I feel like we dehumanize people too much in sports, and we need to back off from that. And hopefully, as bad as this Damar Hamlin situation was, hopefully it'll give people at least a little perspective.
Yeah, I hope it does lead to perspective, and I cannot stop refreshing my Twitter feed, just waiting for the tweet that says that Damar is awake. He's on the road to recovery. I'm living for that tweet, by the way.
Oh, me too. I was watching. Literally, I flipped on CNN last night before I went to bed just to see if there was some sort of an update.
I know.
Like, I mean, that's It's I think it's captivated a lot of people because we think about what might happen, but we never expect it to. And to have it be so traumatizing it was one of the most devastating things you'll ever see. I hope we don't ever have to see it again.
Isn't it? But that's probably the craziest thing about it. You talked about perspective, but I mean, this is one of the few times that I recall in my life history of watching sports where there's actually been an injury to the point where it reverberates outside the playing field.
Yes. That is a great way to put it, Plummer. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. It really did. You see these guys like standing outside of the hospital, like wearing Bengals jerseys, Bills jerseys. Like it's both teams. You know, I'll never forget after 9/11, right? There was the French main newspaper in Paris, the main daily newspaper. On the front page of the paper, they had a line that said today in French. They said a line that said, "Today we are all Americans." And I remember thinking, stuff like that. You know, even France was like, I do not care for the Americans. But it's like, but I mean, that's the kind of thing that happens in tragedy, right? It shouldn't. We shouldn't need tragedy for it.
That's not the issue. Yeah.
Not to editorialize, but we shouldn't need tragedy to recognize that we're all humans. That we all need. Want to be happy and be loved and all of those things. But if something like this at least even reminds us of it, hey man, all more power to it. It's like in the end of Scrooged, right? Bill Murray's like, we can be a little better. We can we can take a blanket and we can say here. It's like, we can be the people we always wish we could be, right?
And it can be something simple too. That's what you got to remember.
Exactly. Just be good to people, right? I mean, now we're all philosophizing, Blubber. We've gotten off baseball.
This thing's gotten deep, man.
I know we're getting in here deep. Pretty soon we're going to be like, the next time they see us, we'll just be meditating. Yeah, exactly. That'll be it. Well, Blummer, any final thoughts before we're getting close to arbitration. Look, 85 days to opening day, Blummer.
Yeah.
85.
Well, I think my final thought or, a recommendation, be ready because it's coming. And it's coming quick. That's one of those things, life comes at you pretty fast. And once you flip that calendar to a new season, February, Valentine's Day gets here in a hurry. Make sure you get the chocolates, make sure you get the flowers, and make sure your spikes are sharpened because that's when you start to report and that's when you start to smell the grass, the dirt, pine tar, and things like that. And that's when it starts to get real. So it's happening very quick. Hang with us, and we'll enjoy the ride with you.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'm trying to get credentialed. I'd like to go to spring training this year, at least a little bit. I'd like to go see a little bit of it.
I just got it. I got part of the spring training schedule, and I'm kind of looking at it, going, okay, those are the dates, and my calendar's starting to fill up a little bit, so I'm kind of excited.
I love it. It's and I don't have to worry about forgetting Valentine's Day because my wife's birthday is February 12th. So
look at you.
So I get them both together. It's all good. I already play it. I plan for it. I plan for it. I got to keep it out. I got to keep it.
I've got 5 women in my house.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I got a lot of roses being passed out.
When is your birthday, Blummer?
April 26th.
So you still got a little time. You're going to be in the season when you turn the big 5-0.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be seasoned.
Is there a game that day? Please tell me there's a game.
Oh, there always is. I hold on a sec.
I hope there's a game that day because if there is,
sitting right here on my board.
I bet you if there's a game that day, it's going to be epic.
Oh, jeez, I'm in Tampa Bay.
Oh no, you're in maybe the worst.
I'll be on and we're flying home for a day off on the 27th.
Oh, well, at least you get the day off on the 27th. That's good. But Tampa Bay, of all places.
Yeah, what a present.
Of all places.
The gift that keeps on giving.
Oh man, down there in the middle of like no man's land where Tropicana Field is. I mean, it's like
at least it'll be a quick flight home.
Yeah, Tampa Bay's like 2 hours. Piece of cake.
How about I shift it to a birthday weekend against the Phillies? I think is who they're playing after.
There you go. That should be the plan. At home, so you'll be home. Perfect. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. We'll be back next week for a fresh podcast brought to you by Bet Online. Again, a huge thanks to all our listeners and viewers across the world. You guys are the best. We appreciate you liking and subscribing, leaving comments. We're so thankful for you guys. We got lots more to come. Blummer's right. Get ready. 85 days to opening day and even less time before pitchers and catchers report. So get ready. Get them jerseys on. Bury me in the H hats. Whatever you got to do. Just make it happen. We'll talk to you next time. Go Astros.